Hey.
This month's big headline. Is the domination of Germany by the Treaty of Versailles finally over, or will it continue?
With the end of the second conference at The Hague, the Young Plan, the new reparations payment plan for Germany, has been completed.
The conference, originally scheduled to last from the 6th to the 10th of January, ended up lasting until the 20th, running 14 days instead of 4.
Here are the reactions from across the political spectrum, from left to right.
Billion-dollar deal in The Hague. Germany caught in golden snare. An immense burden for the German working class.
The Young Plan is a significant improvement over the Dawes Plan, another step away from the unrestricted dominance of the Treaty of Versailles.
Now the fight begins for constructive efforts against fear-mongering. Dissatisfied parties. No faction is satisfied with the outcome in The Hague.
Germany is faced with a new dictate of submission. The French demand sanctions for all eternity.
I'm Indy Neidell. This is The Rise of Hitler, a series of World War II. We'll be covering the events in Germany beginning here in January 1930, with each new episode covering one calendar month. Episodes will come out every other week for now.
I'm Spartacus Olsson. We'll see just how Germany's Weimar Republic, at the time maybe the most liberal democracy in the world, descended into autocracy, and how Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party rose to power.
Something different, or new, about this series is that we are extensively using German newspapers and periodicals of the time to gauge the political climate. Nearly every political party or faction in an ultra-polarized climate had its own paper. Every party or faction had its own spin.
Ever wanted to see me playing a Nazi or Indy, a hardcore communist? If yes, then this is the place to be. So here we are at the end of January 1930.
Welcome to the Weimar Wire, where we get you up to speed on all the communal conflicts, political plots, and societal shenanigans that occupy the minds of the German people. Before we continue, we want to give you a quick rundown of what the political landscape in Germany looks like in January 1930. Here's a snapshot of the last Reichstag elections held May 20th, 1928.
On the far right, there is the National Socialist Workers' Party, NSDAP. And for the moment, it is a fringe extremist party with only 12 seats in the Reichstag. That's roughly 2.6% of the votes.
To the left of the Nazis are multiple right and center-right parties called the Bürgerblock, the bourgeoisie bloc. From far right to center-right, these are the DNVP, DVP, DDP, and Zentrum, the latter being the Christian conservatives, who are, as their name center suggests, in the center. In 1928, these parties, that range from staunch monarchists to moderate conservatives, got 35.1% of the vote, equaling 205 seats in parliament, with Centrum being the strongest, with 12.1% and 62 seats.
To the left of the center lies the strongest party in all of Germany, the SPD, the Social Democratic Party. In 1928, they got 29.8% of the vote, or 153 seats.
Then, last but not least, to the left of the SPD stands the KPD, the German Communist Party. This left extremist party managed to get 10.6% of the vote, 54 seats, making it not a marginal phenomenon, but a fairly heavy hitter in terms of votes and seats.
Now on to the Weimar Wire Political Indicator, brought to you by Time Ghost, giving you the current political trends in Weimar every month. That May 1928 snapshot is far from the current political reality in Germany in January 1930. The popularity of the Nazis has grown substantially as economic downturn and unemployment most often lead to growth on the far ends of the spectrum.
This month, these speculative gains transform into tangible results for the first time. In other words, the Nazis are enjoying an upward trend.
On to the Bürgerblock, traditional far-right until center-right. Since 1928, these parties have largely fared poorly, except Zentrum, that is, which has maintained its position. Overall, one can see a slow disintegration of the center-right democratic parties like DDP and DVP.
So while the Zentrum enjoys a level trend, the rest of the bloc is experiencing a downward trend.
The largest party, the SPD, currently heading the coalition, maintains its popularity levels.
The communists, like the Nazis, are capitalizing on the current climate ripe for polarization and are trending upwards. Okay, back to this month's events.
It seems just now like there is a lot of disagreement about what that Young Plan means for Germany.
It certainly does. But let's get back to the Young Plan later. Before that, I want to look at January's other big headlines. Political violence continues, with street fighting in many cities across the nation. Police forces have their hands full.
After the surprise success of the Nazis in the recent Thüringen state elections, the NSDAP, the National Socialists, or the Nazi Party, is now in a regional ruling coalition for the first time.
As more shockwaves from the recent New York stock market crash hit, Germany, like the rest of the world, faces an economic crisis as unemployment continues to rise and a global recession looms.
This crisis provides yet more fuel for the violence-charged atmosphere on the streets of the nation that has already plagued the Republic for several years. In Berlin on January 13th, the Deutsche Allgemeine Zeitung reports.
On Sunday, January 12, 1930, once again there were serious clashes between communists and National Socialists. In Grenadierstrasse and at Bülowplatz, communists attacked a demonstration organized by National Socialists, and wild brawls broke out at both locations. The police intervened with rubber batons and arrested 13 participants. Moreover, around midnight, about 18 communists attacked a group of 10 National Socialists in uniform at the corner of Barwald and Blücherstrasse. After a brawl, the National Socialists fled, prompting a communist to fire several shots at the group with a revolver, which missed.
This is not the only occasion of serious violence between the two camps this month. And both the Völkische Beobachter and the Rote Fahne, the Nazi Party and Communist Party's official mouthpieces, have been full of such reports, with headlines like "Communist gun-wielding bandits, new attacks on National Socialists," or "The National Socialist murderers provoke."
These clashes are a complicated series of escalations that are, in part, orchestrated by Nazi agitators, such as Gauleiter of Berlin and Member of Parliament Joseph Goebbels, and are embraced by communist leaders like Ernst Thälmann. One of this month's victims was the National Socialist Horst Wessel, an Abteilungsführer of the SA, the Nazi Party militia. For now, he remains alive in hospital.
The communist position on the matter has not helped this violence-charged atmosphere at all.
Clock the slanderers in the face! The great decisive clashes of class struggle would not be as close before us as they are if the lies and defamation campaign of our opponents against the only party organizing the growing revolutionary resistance of the masses had not reached an unbelievable degree of dirtiness and lowliness right now.
The violence extends beyond communists and Nazis, though, and police brutality continues to be an issue.
The most prominent example this month is a gathering of unemployed workers in Hamburg that turns into a vicious all-night street fight with barricades and gunshots. This is how the official police report describes it.
On Thursday morning, January 10th, 1930, around 12:30 a.m., large crowds gathered in Kohlhofenstraße. Police officers were insulted and eventually had to intervene to clear the street, encountering some resistance. Officers were pelted with bricks from a construction site and attacked with iron bars. The officers used their rubber batons and some shots had to be fired at the attackers. As far as is currently known, no one was injured by the shots. 11 officers sustained more or less severe injuries. This report is contradicted, though, by the communist version of events as published in the Rote Fahne.
Using rubber batons and jiu-jitsu grips, the police drove numerous unemployed individuals gathered in front of the Central Employment Office in the direction of the Holstentor. When some construction workers urged the wildly beating police officers to stop their abuse, the Schoenfelder Guards responded by beating down one of the construction workers. In response, the workers employed on a nearby construction site unleashed a hail of bricks on the beating law enforcement officers. In response, the law enforcement officers, armed with guns, fired about 15 shots into the building.
The outrage soon engulfs large parts of the city's left-leaning proletariat. A strike begins, barricades are built, and Hamburg streets are turned into a battlefield throughout the night.
Whichever version of events holds true, tensions between officers of the law and the communists, as well as the National Socialists, continue to rise. The government is using all of the tools at its disposal to deal with the situation, such as suing the KPD, the Communist Party, for slander.
An editor of the Rote Fahne stood trial yesterday for calling the police chief a mass murderer and a butcher of the workers. The verdict was 600 marks.
But the communists are not the only ones who have to answer charges of accusations, insults, and defamation against the state and its servants. In fact, an elementary school teacher and member of the Nazi Party is fired precisely because of such problematic statements at party rallies. This is how the Nazi Party responds to his dismissal.
He identifies the betrayers of the nation for what they are, and this has naturally gone beyond the permissible limit for the current rulers. A man who loves his people above all else, who risks his person and his profession just so that the people do not become even more impoverished and enslaved, is unsuitable to practice the profession of an elementary school teacher. Just be patient, gentlemen. Our time will come, and then we will tell you who is suitable or not. Along the same lines, on January 18th, authorities also banned a single issue of the Rote Fahne because of high treason and incitement to class hatred.
In the future, perhaps we can be forced to no longer refer to a mass murderer and worker hunter by his true profession, but to call him an honorable man. Perhaps we can be forced to refer to recognized thug squads who systematically carry out massacres and shootings against men, women, children, and elderly people of proletarian Germany as officers. In response to the general unrest, mass demonstrations have also been prohibited in the city of Hamburg from tomorrow, February 1st.
All of this has led the communists to fear that their party itself will soon be banned. Yet the Deutsche Reichszeitung suggests that this may not be a genuine fear, but rather a political ploy aimed at inciting a violent and revolutionary atmosphere. They demand the political armed conflict and seemingly want to pressure the government into banning the entire party. That would suit them just fine. But the government isn't considering that. The police powers are entirely sufficient and are being ruthlessly employed to suppress the unrest.
However, Minister of the Interior Karl Severing does not believe that the current powers of state are sufficient. On the contrary, he proposes an addendum to the Reich Protection Law, allowing the government to immediately disperse any gatherings or ban any organizations deemed hostile to the Republic.
Neither the communists nor the Nazis are fans of this new law, and in a rare moment agree that the new measure is a dictatorship law. The Social Democrats look worryingly at these overall developments.
The revolutionary gymnastics with rowdy methods follows suit. The state authority intervenes, the communist press screams ever louder, and in Russia, one observes with satisfaction immediate revolutionary climate. In the end, there is but the tally of the dead and injured, the number of prison sentences, and the strengthening of right-wing extremism.
Yet this past month does not only hold negative developments for the Nazis. They are, for the first time in history, a member of a ruling coalition from those regional Thüringen elections.
Party member Wilhelm Frick is to serve as Minister for the Interior and Education. Their coalition is composed of the National Socialists, the German National People's Party, DNVP, the German People's Party, DVP, and the Thüringen Rural League, and the Reich Party of the German middle class.
While the SPD, the Social Democrats, gets the highest number of seats in the election with 13, it has no hopes of forming a governing coalition. The SPD party newspaper comments on the developments as follows.
A swastika oath on the Constitution. The coalition in the Thüringen Parliament elected the coup plotter Frick as Minister of the Interior against the votes of the Democrats, Social Democrats, and Communists.
Attempts by the Social Democrats to convince the German People's Party to abstain from supporting the National Socialist minister have been in vain.
Or, as a DVP spokesperson remarks,
that the German People's Party is politically and ideologically closer to the National Socialist Party than to the Social Democrats is no secret.
The Nazis have a few things to say about their victory.
A National Socialist assumes a ministerial post for the first time, not to also participate, but to conquer new positions of power for the National Socialist idea.
This conquering of new positions already bears some fruit, as the Völkische Beobachter, again that's the Nazi paper, happily reports.
Due to the changed circumstances in Thüringen, a number of SA members are given the opportunity to join the Thüringen security police. The communists are not too thrilled about this.
The Red Front is banned. Its members are thrown into jail day by day. At the same time, the Hitlerian pushists, fanatical worker murderers, march into the Thüringen government and are supported by Interior Minister Severing and Chancellor Hermann Müller. Of paramount importance is how the Nazi Schutzstaffel, through legal means with the help of the Social Democrats, seeks to forcibly wrest control of the state and power apparatus into its hands.
One of the central issues during the elections in Thüringen is the continued economic plight of the German people.
It's been just over 3 months since the U.S. stock market crashed. On October 27, 1929, after a buying frenzy turned into a selling panic, the Dow Jones plummeted. In a world as interconnected as today, this marked the beginning of a chain of dominoes toppling each other.
Weimar is hit doubly hard. First, because it relies on American investments to prop up its economy, heavy industries, and housing market. And now that well of money has mostly dried up, the loans hanging over the Weimar Republic seem more daunting than ever.
Second, Germany based much of its post-war recovery on exports, yeah? But given the reduced global buying power, exports have suddenly and seriously dwindled. The impact of this depression is hitting pretty hard. As of today, January 31st, there are 3,217,608 unemployed individuals in Germany, an unemployment rate of around 7%.
But Germany is not the worst hit country in this global economic crisis. For instance, unemployment in the US is higher at 8.7% of the workforce. In Great Britain, it is way higher at 12.7%.
France seems to handle the situation better, but there's no way to know for sure because of the lack of a centralized unemployment bureau. So you can't really trust the official numbers, which say fewer than 20,000 unemployed persons, which is obviously too low. Shut up.
In Germany, the effects are keenly felt in Berlin, with upwards of 440,000 people out of work. So the Social Democratic Party demands that,
first and foremost, it is necessary for the stranglehold of the bourgeois politics of Reichspräsident Hindenburg to finally be ended, and for new life, yes, to be infused into the municipalities and states through foreign capital.
So, more loans? Well, given the economic situation, where such additional foreign investment might come from is a really big question.
For the moment, construction is hit hardest, with, check this out, 57% of all construction workers out of a job. The SPD also says government cutbacks are further threatening the already hard-hit industry.
After all, government-funded housing projects in Berlin were stopped last month, and an article in the SPD paper, Vorwärts, says,
the army of unemployed, already alarmingly large, would be significantly increased by ruthless shutdowns. Moreover, contracts with construction companies cannot be simply terminated against their will.
The communists have gone further in their reaction to this announcement in the Reichstag. They have demanded an immediate reversal of the policy and extensive support for the affected workers.
The inquiry from our Reichstag faction forces the SPD, as well as the National Socialists, to clearly declare whether they are fighting for the immediate reversal of the shutdowns and full compensation for the dismissed workers, or not. And this decision, whose outcome we do not doubt, will open the eyes of all those who did not know yet about the anti-working class character of these parties. The Nazis also believe that the economic situation has disastrous consequences for the populace.
In Berlin, there were no less than 16 suicides or attempted suicides in just one day. This high number seems to stem from the start of the year, when economic hardship hits particularly hard for many. But hey, the Republic's achievements keep on growing.
They also have some strong words for the proposed solutions offered by the Social Democrats.
The leaders of the Social Democratic Party reveal their economic wisdom, demanding the immediate removal of all domestic barriers to borrowing abroad. Apparently, social democracy still finds the appalling internal and external indebtedness not great enough.
Even political party unaligned press, such as the Handels- und Industrie-Zeitung, has criticized Germany's over-reliance on foreign investment. Therefore, it can only be welcomed if now a line is drawn under the domination of foreign capital of the German economy.
This domination of foreign capital is not the only perceived foreign domination many people want an end to.
Another is the reparations payments from the World War, whose future was determined in the Second Conference in The Hague.
The Dawes Plan, the current payment plan for German reparations to the Entente, certainly improved Germany's economic outlook and played a big part in helping the country out of the hyperinflation of 1923.
For a variety of reasons. In the years following the Dawes Plan, the German economy was actually not more severely affected by the lingering effects of the Great War than, say, Belgium or France. However, many observers still see parts of it as problematic.
Critics of the plan have pointed out that the reparations payments are tied to the performance of the German economy and could reach exorbitant proportions in relation to the German GDP.
Much has also been made of the public resentment coming from the subjugation of key government entities like the Reichsbahn or the occupation of the Rhineland.
Outside of Germany, the Entente powers have real worries about Germany becoming insolvent because of the vast sums of foreign investments since 1927.
Improvements to the Dawes Plan have been discussed since February last year. The second and final conference ran far over time because of internal differences among the Entente powers and between them and Germany.
These problems center around Article 430 of the Treaty of Versailles. If Germany refuses to observe the whole or part of her obligations, the whole or part of the areas specified in Article 429 will be reoccupied immediately by the Allied and associated forces.
So if Germany were to violate the agreement, various parts of the Rhineland could remain occupied by the Entente powers. The German delegation tried, and failed, to remove this sanction from the new Young Plan. While Article 430 is not directly mentioned in the Young Plan, it is nevertheless still part of it. In essence, as reported by the Allgemeine Deutsche Zeitung,
in the event of Germany's breach of the Young Plan, France obtains full freedom of action by invoking the international agreements in force. While the Versailles Dictate is not directly listed among the existing treaties, there can be no doubt that the Treaty of Versailles remains in force in this regard.
This is seen by many as a further humiliation of Germany's national pride and independence, and prominent among that many are the National Socialists and their Führer, Adolf Hitler.
He believes that this illustrates how Germany is singled out by the Entente powers and forced to legitimize once more a treaty that denotes Germany as the sole cause of the Great War.
But Germany and all its allies during the war all have the same war guilt clause in their respective treaties. In all of them, responsibility of the war is put on the country in question and her allies. Well, this is how the Nazis respond to the news.
Germany is faced with a new dictate of submission. The French demand sanctions for all eternity. However, we solemnly declare today that the future of German nation-state will consider the signature null and void, treating all Hague resolutions as shreds of paper.
This is based on the lie that the Nazis have been spreading, that Germany did not actually lose the war, but was stabbed in the back by a global Jewish conspiracy.
In other words, any punishment of Germany whatsoever is an unfair Jewish plot in the Nazis' view. However, many other political factions do also express dissatisfaction with the Young Plan. The Social Democrats, on the other hand, generally support the plan and have this to say about the Nazis' position.
The German nationalists are demanding louder every day that France solemnly revoke Article 430. Naturally, the French nationalists have caught the ball. They claim that such a move by Germany already reveals its intentions to safely sabotage the Young Plan.
However, they and their view of things remain in the minority. The resistance to the Young Plan goes beyond the political.
Even military commanders have voiced their concerns. Men like General Konrad Krapf von Dellmensingen in an open letter to German President Hindenburg.
The new tribute and disgrace treaty has been signed. Over 14 million Germans elected von Hindenburg as president because they trusted him to restore the German fatherland. The hour to justify this trust is at hand. These 14 million patriotic Germans would see a decisive no against the planned subjugation of Germany as the most glorious crowning achievement of his honorable life, and await this no.
The discord even extends to The Hague, right into the German delegation, to Reichsbank President Hjalmar Schacht. He, as the representative of the German Federal Bank and an ardent opponent of the Young Plan, hands over a letter to be read in front of the whole delegation, saying, "This is the hour of my life," as he does so.
The letter says that the Reichsbank has yet to decide whether it accepts the Young Plan. As a result, he is celebrated as a hero by the hardline opponents of the Young Plan, but the liberal left sees a danger. One can clearly see the reputation of weakness that the German government currently enjoys abroad thanks to Dr. Schacht.
In any case, whether the Young Plan will be accepted by the Reichstag or not, the real challenges will only emerge once the foreign policy topic of the Hague Conference transitions into the domestic policy issue of political and economic consequences. The German people must rather prepare themselves for battles of the most severe kind, says the Allgemeine Deutsche Zeitung.
So, January 1930 ends with the Weimar Republic facing several existential questions.
Will the Young Plan eventually be accepted by the Republic, or will it tear the fabric of the nation?
Will the economic downturn subside like the one in 1928, or will it continue to worsen and turn into a long-term recession, increasing the economic hardship facing the German people?
Will the proposed change to the Republic Protection Law put an end to political violence? Or will it further provoke the agitators?
Will the Communist Party or the Nazi Party be judged hostile to the Republic and banned?
Will the Nazi Party succeed beyond Thuringen? Or will it remain a one-hit wonder of mainstream politics? Perhaps February will give us some answers.
There is one force we can't forget to mention before we go, and that is the Time Ghost Army, for it is they who provide us with the means to make these broadcasts. Matthew Gower is the Army member of this episode.
You too can be part of this adventure, so for ever more of this, join the Army at timeghost.tv or patreon.com. See you next time. Weimar Wire, signing off!